What's happening, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adam. This is Vancity Audi. In behind me we have my 2012 Audi S4 tuned with Integrated Engineering's Stage 2 Dual Pulley and Throttle Body upgrade file. Right now I'm using their 93 octane tune, but for the majority of the time that I spent using the Dual Pulley tune, I have been using E40. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to take you guys for a quick drive. I'm going to go over the highs and the lows and what my experience was like while using this tune. How much I enjoyed it, the few things that I didn't, and just kind of give you guys my overall impressions on how much I enjoyed this setup and whether I think it is worth the money. Let's jump in the car and go for a drive. Well, first things first, let's hear what this banshee of a 3-liter V6 supercharged motor sounds like. Screams and screams some more. For someone like me that doesn't really like to, I'm not even sure how to word this. Like, I'm not a huge person that needs a lot of attention while I'm out and about driving around. I do like it to be subtle. This is not the tune and the setup for you. This car screams. It is loud, in my opinion, somewhat obnoxious, but for those people that really enjoy that supercharger whine, that scream that you get from under the hood, it is definitely right for you. Now, along with that supercharger whine, you also get a ton of exhaust noise. Regardless of your setup, when you're at wide open throttle on a dual pulley setup, you're gonna make a ton of noise. And the reason for that is, if you have any common sense and love your motor being in one piece and functioning, you should install test pipes when you go with a dual pulley setup. That's the first thing that I'm actually gonna discuss in this video, is a lot of people end up going with a dual pulley setup, they love the whine, but then they don't realize that you're going to melt your catalytic converters. They are so damn close to your motor, and this car generates so much heat from those exhaust gases that you end up melting those cats, and you could possibly have a catastrophic failure. So that's the first thing I'm going to discuss, is not only the sound that for some is super intoxicating from that whine, but also very loud exhaust systems. I'm currently utilizing CTS test pipes, which go into Integrated Engineering downpipes, and we've actually installed vibrant ultra quiet resonators in those downpipes to quiet the car down. Because it is my daily driver, I like to keep the car very quiet when I drive, but I like it to sound pretty gnarly when I open it up on track. The problem is with those test pipes, even with those huge resonators on there and a full standard OEM catback exhaust from Audi that came with the car, it's still really loud and quite raspy. And not very many people like that. There are some cool things that you can do with different exhaust systems, but I find that it is ultimately hard, we'll say, to find a really good sounding dual pulley car setup, regardless of exhaust. I have never been a huge fan of the exhaust sound of these cars. So no matter what you do with a dual pulley setup, you definitely should go with upgraded test pipes so you don't melt those cats, but by doing so, be prepared for a very loud, raspy, and to some people, annoying exhaust note. So with the upgraded test pipes as being the first thing that I highly recommend with a dual pulley setup, the second thing I'm going to talk about has to do with the performance of your car while utilizing a dual pulley setup, and that is monitoring and keeping your intake air temps as low as you possibly can. What we see with these dual pulley cars is they generate so much heat. You have to. I'm not saying this is a should do. You have to upgrade your heat exchanger. I also recommend upgrading your coolant pump and recommend upgrading your coolant lines to 3/4 inch rubber tubes, because what it comes with, the standard OEM cooling lines, the standard cooling on this car is not anywhere near sufficient for a dual pulley setup. Integrated Engineering specifies on their tunes when you flash the car that when you're running their E40 file, if you're seeing over 70 degrees Celsius on your intake air temps, you're not getting all the car can make because it pulls timing, because it gets so damn hot. So it is a necessary thing that when you choose this setup, a dual pulley setup in your B8 S4, you upgrade all of your cooling parts as well to make sure you can get the most out of your car. So you got test pipes to utilize a dual pulley setup properly, and you have all of the cooling upgrades you can possibly do to make sure you're getting everything you can out of it. The other thing that you're gonna need with a dual pulley setup is obviously that crank pulley is what you upgrade in addition to the supercharger pulley. So you have to have both of those pulleys upgraded. Now there are a ton of different companies out there. I chose to go with Integrated Engineering, which has been fantastic for me, and that is upgraded both units, and it's a 188 mil for the crank, and I believe a 57.5 mil for the supercharger pulley. I'm not sure what the ratio is, but those are the size of the pulleys, and it has worked extremely well. The power that you get from it has been really great. The other thing that Integrated Engineering has chose to offer is they offer dampening with that press-on crank pulley upgrade. A lot of companies have gone with a full billet piece of really lightweight metal that goes on that crank pulley. In turn, it lowers the weight. I don't disagree with that, but you have no dampening anymore. And there's a bunch of vibrations that get sent through the motor that are not particularly good for the motor and can affect the longevity of your B8 S4 and that wonderful 3-liter V6 motor. So by using Integrated Engineering's crank pulley, it is dampened and it worked really well. I didn't have any issues whatsoever, and it worked like a hot damn in the quarter mile. So the last piece of the puzzle to run this tune, besides the test pipes, besides the cooling upgrades, and that crank pulley, is the throttle body upgrade from Integrated Engineering as well. That is the final piece to the puzzle to use this tune. Now, that is probably, I don't want to say the biggest letdown. It kind of was, but I didn't use it to its fullest potential, and I'm the first to admit that. So when people use an upgraded throttle body, you're going to experience the biggest gains with those units when you also utilize a ported supercharger. So you're increasing all of the volume, all of the size, and it allows for that amazing free flow through the throttle body. I did not upgrade my supercharger. I did not ever have plans to go with a ported blower because I wanted to showcase to the world what a simple bolt-on build could do. I did not want to go down the rabbit hole of building a second race car. I already have one. I didn't want to. So that was another reason why I stuck with it and didn't want to go further. But for what it was, it didn't quite make as much power as I hoped. Now, I can't remember off the top of my head what the actual wheel horsepower claimed gain was for Integrated Engineering. I think it was 12 wheel horsepower from that unit. Again, don't quote me. You can check out their website to see what it is. But I think I gained like 6 or 7 wheel horsepower. So very, very insignificant for such a pricey unit. But then again, I didn't port my supercharger, so I didn't see the full effect of what that 80 mil throttle body is capable of. So I don't want to say it was a waste of money as well, because I noticed a gain throughout my entire power band. If you guys are subscribers, you may have seen my dyno video that I did of that throttle body upgrade when I first installed it, and from start to finish, what I actually saw in terms of gains. And it wasn't just in one part up top of the power band, it was throughout the entire pull. So you definitely get a better throttle response with that upgrade. You just get a bit more power throughout the entire pull, which through day-to-day driving is noticeable. On the track, I did notice better results as well. I went quicker, I went faster. It's just on that dyno sheet, it did not look to be as wonderful an upgrade as I hoped it would be. But like I'll say the third time, I did not port my supercharger, so I didn't quite give it the best chance of success. But if you're just doing a standard bolt-on build without upgrading your ported your supercharger, you're not going to port it. I can't necessarily recommend it and say it's really worth the money. Next thing I'll touch on is the gas mileage that I saw while utilizing this tune. Now, keep in mind when I share these miles per gallon, I always blend ethanol. Even on my pump gas tune that I'm running right now, I'm running a 93 octane tune, but I'm running E17. That's to make sure I get rid of any timing correction that I might have. On all of my logs, there is zero correction throughout all of my pulls and all of my quarter mile runs while using this 93 octane tune. So with that in mind, the mile per gallon that I saw regularly, and I'm seeing right now actually for a matter of fact, is 19 miles per gallon. If I do a lot of city driving, it drops to like 18.9, 18.8. And if I do a lot of highway driving, I get up to 20. So in that variance of 18, high 18s to very, very, very low 20s is what I was seeing on the 93 octane tune, which is what I'm using right now. When I was racing and throughout the bulk of the summer and fall, I was using the E40 tune. Makes this car a whole nother beast. If you've seen my dyno videos of, actually it would be my last video that I released, where I go from E40 to 93 to 91, you can see just how much of a difference you make in power from the timing increase that you get from running E40. Mad power, feels phenomenal, but it kills gas mileage. I was running an E38, E41 in between that at the end of the year, now that I figured out my battery issues. And I used to see, I don't see anymore, but it was around 17.5 miles per gallon. When I was really, really on it all the time and racing a lot, it dropped down to 16, which is horrible fuel mileage for a daily driven car. But when I was on the freeway more than I was at the racetrack, it crept up closer to 18, but on average 17 miles per gallon with the E40 tune utilizing a dual pulley and a throttle body upgrade. Next thing is daily drivability. How well does it drive to and from work on your everyday commute? We know how well it works at the track. That's the primary focus of my videos, and what I love doing in these cars is all performance, performance, performance. But for daily drivability, it's extremely, extremely good. Like, really, really good. For a daily driven car, it's a supercharged motor with a very, very large displacement motor, a 3-liter V6. That's a pretty decent sized V6. And you always have grunt. You put your foot down, you move instantly. It's not like a turbocharged motor, not like my RS3 where we started bumping up the power levels with a bigger hybrid turbo. You get some turbo lag. In this car, you don't. You put your foot down, you're gone. Like, it downshift and go. Yes, you have to wait for the damn transmission to shift if you're in a DSG like mine, but if you're in a manual car, you're in the right gear, you put your foot down, you move out. There's no delay. So when you're on the freeway and stuff like that and you need passing power and you go to step on it, your car has instant response, especially with that throttle body upgrade. As I just previously mentioned, it's not a huge difference in terms of this massive power gain you see, but you do get better throttle response. The only thing that I will say negative about this car, and I can't say it's really necessarily due to the tune, actually I know it's not because of the tune, is the transmission. It's never been a happy transmission. It gets confused sometimes. Sometimes it goes too far in the revs. I'm supposed to shift at 7,200 RPM. On my logs, it's getting like 7,300 and it kind of stutters for a second. It isn't as well sorted as a B8.5. Now, with the integrated engineering TCU tune, which I am using and have always used, I keep forgetting to mention that, guys, and I'm sorry. Whenever I tune my cars, the ECU, I always pair the TCU as well. I think it is dumb, I think it is ignorant, and a very, very poor choice for people when they just tune their ECU. Your ECUs telling the engine to make all this power, and your transmission hasn't been told how to deal with it. They need to go hand in hand. So when I tuned the car with the transmission tune, it definitely helped increase the clamping pressure of your clutches, and it works better, and it much more coincides with the power you're making. But it's never been a great transmission. It has never been perfectly sorted, and out of anything with the car, that's been its biggest fault. So I can't say that the drivability has been affected necessarily by the tune that I'm using in a poor way, just the OEM hardware, I guess, that comes in these B8 S4s. Second to last thing I'm going to talk about with you guys is the maintenance needed to make sure your dual pulley throttle body upgraded B8 S4 is up to par, up to snuff. I see so many people with virtually the exact same setup as mine, and they're getting nowhere near the amount of performance that I am. There's nothing groundbreaking about what I'm doing with this car, what I have done with this car, but I pay attention to it. I log it a lot. I notice the smallest little hiccups here and there, and then I look into them. I don't ignore them. I just keep driving. You need to really be on top of your maintenance in these cars. At this dual pulley throttle body upgraded E40 power level, you're really asking for almost everything the car can give you. And you really feel it when you're going all out at the racetrack. When you daily drive the car, you don't necessarily feel it as much, but your maintenance needs to be on, like, just 100%. I'm not saying that to scare people out of this, and it has nothing in particular to do with the integrated engineering tune, but just the fact that you're stressing the motor a lot more than the other stuff, than the previous levels of power. You're asking for as much as you can out of it, out of that supercharger, and it gets quite hard on the vehicle. So really make sure you're checking your coolant levels. If your coolant starts disappearing, figure out where it's going. Don't just ignore it. Check your oil levels. Make sure it's not dropping through the floor and you're missing 2 liters of oil, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, what's going on? There's something wrong with my car. You got to pay attention to that stuff. Log your intake air temps to make sure your cooling system is efficient and you're getting the most out of your car. Log your timing reduction. Make sure your fuel's up to par. There are so many different things that come into play with a dual pulley throttle body upgraded B8 S4 that if you're not paying attention to, you're not going to get the most out of it. So as much as you can, bolt on and go. I definitely didn't do that to get the most out of it. I had to pay a lot of attention. I want to say even more attention to this car than cars that I've owned in the past, to really make sure you get every last drop of horsepower out of this thing. So to wrap this baby up, is it worth it? Was all the money I dumped into this to make it a dual pulley throttle body upgraded B8 S4 worth it? Hell yes it was. The car, when it's running well, is fantastic. It's really, really enjoyable to drive. It's just when it's not perfectly sorted, when one thing falls out of rhythm with the rest of the car, you really notice it. Whereas in previous cars I've owned, one thing can be out of sort and you don't really notice. Now, something that I should mention while I'm saying all that is, if you're familiar with the channel, you are a subscriber, you may have seen my 6-way dyno comparison that I did with a bunch of 3-liter supercharged V6s. All Audis, B8.5 S4s and an A7. And something we noticed is, if people don't log their cars and pay attention to how well their car is working, they're not getting even remotely close to the performance that their car is capable of. So again, stressing back to the maintenance and stuff like that, you really have to be on top of it. I'm not trying to scare people away from it. It's been a ton of fun and very, very, very well worth the money, very well worth the time and the effort. Running 10 seconds in these cars in the quarter mile, it's a hell of a lot of fun. It screams and makes a bunch of obnoxious noises, but it was really fun. So if you want to dive in, make sure you know that it's not just a simple bolt on and go and you're going to get everything out of it. There's a lot of things to keep in check, a lot of things you want to check on to make sure you get the most out of your vehicle. But for what it's worth, I am extremely satisfied with working with integrated engineering. They have been unbelievable to work with. Their customer service is freaking nuts. I'm just blown away to this day, the amount of support they gave me, and just always positive vibes. Like, you didn't get the fact that I was a burden on them, or I was pissing them off, or I was bugging them because of the questions that I had, wanting to get the most out of this car. And the customer experience, and once we figured out our hardware issues, which had nothing to do with the tune itself or the software, it worked really well, and it's a really, really enjoyable car to drive. So, dual pulley, throttle body upgrade, E40 from Integrated Engineering. Fast, fun, but you gotta keep your eye on it. If you're less inclined to want to go all out and you're super performance driven, their pump gas tunes, like I'm on right now, are still a lot of fun. At the wheels, I'm still making over 400 wheel horsepower on an all-wheel drive Mustang dyno. Those are uncalibrated, unconfigured numbers. It's just uncorrected, sorry, that's what I was looking for. Uncorrected numbers on a 91 octane tune. So it's still boogies, it still moves out, and it is a ton of fun to drive. So if you're in the market, B8s are a lot cheaper, but they definitely run the risk of more transmission issues and more little finicky things here and there. But if you can only afford a B8, I did it. I'm not a guy with a ton of money. I am just out here to have fun. I had to hold back from spending money on the RS3 this year because I was putting it into this car, because it was a new fun experience and something that I was learning. I had never owned a supercharged powered car before this one. So lots of fun. I highly recommend it. If you have the dough, jump into a dual pulley throttle body upgrade setup from Integrated Engineering in a V8 or an 8.5 S4. A lot of fun. Keep your eyes on all the little details, or else you're not gonna get all of it. But once you do, wow, is it ever a riot. Thank you all for watching, guys, and until next time, take care. Yeah, boy! Just mash your foot and go. It's a lot of fun.